Great. Alex, thanks for joining. Really excited to chat with you. You've been product manager multiple times. You started your own company, Cork, wound that down, and then became a product manager at Drift, which has got acquired by SalesLoft. So lots of product experience. And we're going to talk a little bit about being a PM at the different stages of a startup from pre-seed to growth. So welcome.
Awesome. Thanks, Volker. Super happy to be talking with you on these topics. Yeah, I've seen a lot of different product organizations, worked in a lot of different stages and types of companies. So have a few odds and ends that I'd love to share with you.
Yeah, great. So maybe let's just kick off with a baseline. Like, what do you consider like main differences in companies that are kind of pre-seed, seed, Series A, and then we'll call it growth or scale?
Yeah, absolutely. When I think about the differences between all those orgs, I really think about it on like two primary axes that are constantly shifting. And those two axes are what I consider to be like product maturity and organizational maturity. And what I mean by each one of those is product maturity being how developed is it from the product market fit stage to where you're moving to scaling and truly like growing and expanding the features and capabilities of the product. And then organizational maturity is really thinking about what tools and resources do you have within the organization, whether those are coworkers or pieces of software to help you do your job. And when you go from pre-seed to Series A to scaling, those things are constantly changing, which means that your role as a product manager is evolving with that.
Yeah, it's almost actually like the stages of financing should follow the evolution of the product market fit and the organization in a way. So, and I guess pre-seed, you're still probably validating the problem, or maybe, seed, you're validating the solution. Series A, you're validating like there's a go-to-market motion that can be repeatable, and then B and beyond, you're really trying to scale, expand that motion, drive efficiencies, etc. Is that fair?
That's exactly right. And to make matters more complicated, there might be external factors that actually change that model altogether. I've worked at organizations where we're Series A or Series B, and the dreaded pivot word comes up because maybe there was some external factor that changed the equation around whether or not you really have product market fit today. And you do need to quickly pivot and move to something else that is going to give you that exceptional value add to your users that once again achieves product market fit.
Yeah, and it's something that's always evolving. I find like product market, you might have had it, and then you reduce it, and you have to keep chipping away at getting better at it. So
Exactly.
ongoing process, as we all know. But okay, so let's talk about what does it mean to be a PM at these different stages? Like, how does it? Maybe you can talk about the pros and cons at a personal level, or maybe just overall describe the differences.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would once again want to think about the answer to that question through those two factors of product maturity and organizational maturity. And so when you're working in an organization that has a less mature product, you are indeed laser focused on achieving and validating that product market fit. And you also need to do it in a very fast manner. You don't have all day to decide on the solutions to problems or how exactly you're going to tackle a tricky situation, because the clock is in fact ticking. And so when you're working in a product capacity in these earlier organizations, I think you really need to constantly be connecting with your customers and validating that you're solving a truly painful problem for them. There's a metaphor that's commonly used that, are you building vitamin-like solutions or painkiller-like solutions? And I think there's a lot of truth to that, to be honest with you. When you're especially pre-seed or seed, you need to be building something that people truly want to a point where they're often willing to pay for it. And when you move to a more mature organization, you've hopefully started to achieve some of that product market fit foundation. And you can really start to think about incrementality that's going to help your product retain customers and kind of achieve that stickiness, and also add incremental value on top of that baseline core value that you're adding to your customers. And so those are very different ways to go about identifying problems and iterating and building on top of what you've discovered. So that's the
Got it.
product aspect of things. The last thing I'll mention is from an organizational standpoint, when things are earlier stage, you often have less resources at your fingertips to get things done, which can mean that you do indeed need to be wearing a lot of hats, especially as a product person. More often than not, product managers are some of the best people to do a lot of things good enough, and you need to be able to step into that role to handle a lot of things that might fall outside of the traditional product wheelhouse to simply get things done. Whereas later stage, you can become a bit more specialized in what you're doing and really stay focused on a handful of important responsibilities.
Yeah. So what you're saying probably to me boils down to almost like a pre-Series A, post-Series A difference in terms of product role, which is like pre-Series A, you're trying to find the right customer. Do they care? Who should I go after, etc. Getting them to use the product at all. Maybe post-Series A, you're trying to find for those customers, how can I get them to be more successful with the product? Can I
Exactly.
get them to stay longer? Can I get them to use it more? Can I get them to pay more in a way?
Exactly.
So when someone's evaluating, we have recruited for PMs. I've met many applicants, and always been surprised that people don't have a very clear focus around what stage to go after. And maybe you were at that point as well at
Yeah.
some point where you were thinking early stage or late stage. So, how should someone who's considering a startup think about what's the right stage for them as a product manager?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. I think it's a very personal preference at the end of the day, but I do think there's nothing that compares to getting experience yourself and understanding what makes you tick and what environments you can succeed in as well. And so, my general advice would be if you're early in your career and you're just starting out, I think erring on the side of getting exposure to doing more can help lay a foundation for one, simply building muscle in a lot of different areas that can set you up for success later on in your career. But it also gives you exposure to the things that maybe you really like doing or don't like doing, so that in your next career move, you can optimize for focusing on those things that you really like or you're really good at, and maybe start to avoid some of the things that you're less good at or you like doing less. The other factor here that's a little bit tricky to thread into kind of that narrative is I think earlier in your career, you can naturally benefit from guidance from individuals who have more experience and who can help you solve really tricky problems or situations that you maybe have never seen before. And I think going back to that organizational maturity side of things, when things are when you're strapped and you have less resources and there's a lot of fires to put out, the opportunity to have more of that traditional mentorship and guidance diminishes a little bit. And so if you skew too early stage, you might find yourself in a situation where you're not getting the support that you might need or really want in order to ensure that you're building that right product foundation. So it is a tricky needle to thread, but my general advice would be if you're early stage, or I'm sorry, if you're early in your product career, focusing on actually that Series B or Series C company, in my experience, gives that right mix of being able to still wear a lot of hats and kind of get your hands dirty in a lot of different areas, but also still has enough time for you to get the right support and guidance to set you up for success in your product career.
Right. And especially like a Series A, sometimes it's like one PM or like it's the first PM working with the founders, which can be relatively intense. So whereas by B or C, you've got some, you know, hierarchy or organization around a product group. So
Yeah.
that's really good advice. But if you haven't had the experience, you've also said like try to get exposure by going, broad and doing things you haven't done basically.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my first product role was at a very early stage company. We had just pivoted, and I think there were only like 8 or 9 employees at the time. And so it was absolutely crazy. But personally, I get bored really easily. I like to wear a lot of hats. I like to try a lot of different things. And I absolutely loved that environment. And so that worked for me, but that doesn't work for everybody. Some people like a lot more structure and guidance and focus in their day to day. And that environment might not be great for you, but there's really only one way to figure that out, and that's through experience and in my experience.
And then can you go the other way? Like, can people who start early stage still be good PMs later stage, or vice versa? Or is it really two different jobs for two different groups of people?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. I mean, I can really only speak to my own experience and maybe a few other anecdotes I've had from colleagues. But to answer your question, I think it's absolutely possible to go both ways. I think a lot of it depends, or the big difference is going to be how happy and satisfied you feel in those different environments. But as you go further to like later stage, there are different qualities that I think will help set you up for success. For example, communication becomes a lot more important in my experience when you go later stage, because not everybody is maybe aware of all of like the problems or situations that the business is facing right now. And so to be able to communicate outward and influence individuals around the direction you're going becomes really, really, really important. Whereas earlier stage, those things maybe are a little bit less important because everyone is fighting the same fire and is aware of the problems that are happening. And so I think you can absolutely be successful in both environments. You might need to learn some new skills in order to really start to perform at the level that is satisfactory. Totally doable, but at the same time, you might prefer one environment over the other. In which case, again, I would advise getting experience in both of those areas so you can just optimize further down the line on what works for you.
Okay, makes sense. Okay, we're about at time, so two quick fire questions. What are your go-to resources for learning as you're trying to, learn on the job or outside?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there is nothing better than human connections and conversations. And so if you have a network of individuals who are working in product management or working alongside product managers, talk with them, ask for introductions, see if you can regularly set up time to get coffee and talk through situations. I think there's nothing better than that. I think oftentimes people get caught up very quickly and trying to understand new frameworks or hacks or strategies as if it's some sort of silver bullet to success. And more often than not, it's not. Those are just tools. So
Okay,
connections is huge.
great. And what's a product that you use regularly and love?
Honestly, I've been a devoted Reddit user for over 14 years. Absolutely love it. The depth of knowledge in some areas of Reddit is incredible. There's incredible community there where I've met friends and even my apartment broker on there. It's fun. It's deeply human. It's just an incredible place on the internet, and I hope it doesn't change.
Amazing. Did you buy any shares?
I thought about it. I didn't. It seems like it might have been a risky move.
Okay, well, Alex, thank you for joining. Really appreciate it. Some fantastic insights, and I
Awesome.
hope to talk to you again soon.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks, Polkit.